Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, here, of course, with the Trashman on this Thursday edition of the pod. Going to be talking some free agency stuff today as we get ready for, we're getting ready for the Senior Bowl, but right after that, we're going to have the Combine coming up. Trashman Cody Carpentier just texted me and said the Combine credentials are already open, so we need to start thinking about some of this free agency stuff whenever we get the media availabilities with the different GMs and coaches and some of these.
Where is it this year?
Well, it's in Indy for another year.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. I kind of think they're just going to – it seem like the NFL really wants to move it, but none of the old stodgy coaches or GMs or anybody else wants to move it. I kind of don't want to move it either.
Really? I want to move it someplace with a nightlife.
Well, I understand, but I mean, to me, it would take me like a whole day and a half to be able to get my bearings about me. You know what I mean? Whereas, in Indy, I know where everything is. I know the places I like to go.
I know where everything isn't.
Indy. Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so yeah, we'll be talking some of that stuff. Also, just a reminder again, Senior Bowl content starting next week. I'll be leaving Sunday just to get in early for a quick fishing trip. But I think we'll be meeting up Monday at the Airbnb with me and Trashman and Matt and Cody from Player Profiler. We'll have a bunch of good content coming from out of there. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed here on YouTube. That's a good reminder too. If you could also please leave us a rating and a review, whether you're listening to Apple Podcasts or in Spotify. I've noticed that in Spotify, you can leave ratings and reviews now, and we have like 14 total. we have like, which is like literally 500 times less than the number of people who listen to this podcast every episode by our metrics. So if you listen to the pod and you enjoy it, we put these out for free. We'd appreciate a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. All right, Trash Man, we're going to start out by talking
at that.
Yeah, we're going to be, well, I really don't care. You can say the Trash Man sucks.
You can't say it about Kaneko, though.
He's too busy playing with that dog all the time. All right, so yeah, we'll get into Trey Palmer, also the wide receiver out of Nebraska. He's going to be an interesting case. I'm really interested to hear what Trash Man has to say about Palmer and how he stacks up with some of these other guys. Certainly he has some tangible traits that are that are just mouth-watering, but some other things that we probably need to kind of discuss. Before we do that, let's just go through each position. I told you, Trash Man, that we will look at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and each come up with a sort of a free agency item that we're looking out for. I think coming into the Combine, we'll probably do a series where we'll go through each division and really sort of nail down these things so we're prepared to ask the questions, right? But just the biggest at each position. And then right before we got on the podcast, you told me that you misread my text and you said you thought it was dynasty biggest questions at each position. So, but does any of these have anything to do with free agency for you? Like, let's start with quarterback.
A couple of them, yeah.
Okay. So do you have a quarterback free agency sort of fallout question mark? Or something?
I do. I don't know if it's my biggest one, but it's definitely one that's intriguing to me.
Okay.
And that was Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Arguably, not inarguably his best season as an NFL quarterback.
It's not arguable. It's not,
for a team with, really good wide receiver options. It's probably in a good place to add some more pass catching options, this preseason. So he's a question mark for me because it seems like, he has kind of intangible skills that, it seems like when he has the weapons, he's able to utilize them. And he's never really had the weapons until he was in Seattle. He's never really had a viable opportunity, at least for the past, few years until he was in Seattle.
For the sake of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I hope he stays.
Yeah.
I think he's good for those guys. I'm not sure. I think he's going to ask for a lot of money. And he's already come out and said, like, look.
What's a lot of money for Geno Smith?
Well, a lot of money. I think he's going to want a lot of money. He's going to want probably $30 million a year or something like that. 35. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's kind of a lot of money.
I mean, like
Geno can't turn back into a pumpkin. I'm just like, come on, dude.
I mean, if Kirk Cousins can command that kind of money,
I can't believe all this Kirk Cousins.
See why Geno
still to this day you can't make the Kirk cut. At least, hey, will you at least admit now that Kirk? Would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson? Because that was the debate coming out of the 2012 Senior Bowl.
As a fantasy quarterback?
No, as a quarterback.
As a quarterback, I feel like Russell. I don't know what happened this year. I don't know if he's not healthy. It seems like he's never been the same since his injury about halfway through the season, the year before in Seattle.
You've always hated Kirk Cousins, trash man. Just admit it.
Well, I've always thought, I just never thought he was a winner.
I mean, come on, dude.
And he hasn't proven to be.
Well, he's bet on himself. He's a winner in the game of life. He's bet on himself, and bet on himself.
That may be the case. Yeah, I'd be the winner in the game of life.
You like that? Trash man, you like that?
If I was making that kind of money for those kind of results.
All right. Look, at quarterback, I think that the biggest – I mean, that's like start talking about these quarterbacks. I know it's the most intriguing. It's the stuff that on sports talk you're going to hear the most about and everything. It's what people care about. But, I mean, I think the running backs and wide receivers and tight ends are more interesting. I think a quarterback, of course, just for all the reasons – I mean, you know what the biggest story is, trash man. The one that's going to get every headline
Aaron
on
Rodgers
Center.
Or Tom Brady.
Brady, I think. Brady's the biggest. Because Aaron Rodgers isn't a free agent.
Yeah.
He's not a free agent. He just bitches every year and acts like he wants to get traded. I don't think he's technically a free agent until 2026. So I think the biggest story in free agency is Tom Brady. Whether that's San Francisco, Las Vegas, all the different
San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean,
they already got two quarterbacks. They're not sure what they're going to do.
They've talked. I mean, don't act like it hadn't been talked about, trash man. And then, of course, who knows what's going to happen with Tua? But that how Miami was flirting with him to begin with, right? You could definitely see that. I'm not sure how I would feel about how that would impact like Waddle and Tyreek Hill and stuff. There's a lot of time to get to that. I want to move on to running backs because there's two situations that really stick out to me. One is I kind of off the radar, but Rashad Penny is set to be a free agent. And how bad would it swindle us with all the Kenny Walker stuff, getting so high on Kenny Walker if somehow Seattle decided to bring him back and Rashad Penny could stay healthy?
I mean, you know how much I love Rashad Penny, so it doesn't hurt me that much.
Oh, but it would hurt you that you've gotten him so high up in the dynasty rankings and everything for Kenny Walker.
I mean,
that would be a dead ass even split. It would be horrible.
Those rankings are plastic. We can move these players around. I mean, I think it would be more. I mean, come draft time, it would be a bigger headache.
Oh, God.
Choosing where to get the value.
Well, I mean, you just wouldn't take Kenneth Walker when he's going in the third round or whatever. You would take Rashad Penny in the 14th round and just profit, right? Yeah. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if they'll bring him back or whether they're just so happy with what they've seen out of Kenny Walker they don't want to do anything to kind of upset that apple cart. But the fact of the matter is, Kenny
Walker wasn't healthy all season.
They've always acted like they've always had extra backs and stuff come in. It's been this clown car of Travis Homers and DJ Dallases and all these idiots that come out. You know what I mean? It's like not enough to where they could be fantasy viable, but just enough to where it hurts these other guys. My biggest one, though, was just closely monitoring what's going to happen with David Montgomery in Chicago.
Okay, that's one. That's not who I was thinking of.
Okay, so basically, I looked at it before we got on. Do you realize how good Khalil Herbert's been in the games that David Montgomery didn't play?
Yes, this is something I've harped on incessantly.
No, I'm saying just how good. Do you realize just how good he's been?
Yes.
And just how well he's been.
One of the most efficient backs in the league.
Without David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert by himself is so much better than David Montgomery. You know what I mean? It's like if you take David Montgomery out of the mix, Khalil Herbert is better than he is.
Yeah.
Like in everything. Okay, so in the games that Montgomery either missed or left early, like super early over the last 2 seasons, I think it was either 6 or 7 games total that I've looked at, right? Khalil Herbert averaged 19.5 rushing attempts per game, 2.2 targets per game, and 16.0 PPR fantasy points per game. That over the course of the season, that blows out of the water anything that David Montgomery's done.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's sustainable over the course of the season, I kind of think it is. The whole thing about Justin Fields being there now brings a small bit of a wrinkle to it.
But we never really saw Khalil Herbert as a goal line back. I mean, we never really expected him to be.
Well, but he can be.
He can be, but but that's not where
218 pounds. I mean, he's fine.
But that's not where our bread is getting buttered with Herbert. It's not. To me, that's not a. To me, it's not as much of an impact on Herbert as it would be, on a David Montgomery.
Why?
Just because Herbert can create his yards. He could create his.
He's more efficient on a per touch basis. Like, that's just clear if you look at any of the metrics. But I couldn't believe it that without David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert is better than David Montgomery. Like, why would they ever?
This is what I've been saying.
Yeah, but why would they ever want to pay David Montgomery $7.2 million to come back? I don't understand. If that's what he's going to be asking for, I hope he doesn't, because I want the Khalil Herbert thing to happen. What do you think Khalil Herbert's ADP would be in redraft next year if David? It's just like there's going to be a glass ceiling on where people are going to be comfortable taking a guy like Khalil Herbert.
I feel like the 4th round.
Oh, no. People aren't taking Khalil Herbert. No, they're not going to go up that high for him, I don't think.
Unless there's no David Montgomery?
Yeah, unless the field really has gotten a lot sharper. And I know the field has gotten sharper over the course of the last half decade or so. So many outfits, giving this analysis and helping out. And
I guess I think about our leagues and where you might still be.
He's not going to go. I'm talking about leagues that we make for the people. Leagues we make the cheat sheet for, right? Just the leagues that people play in with their friends and family. People are not going to be. I think the Khalil Herbert, the highest I could see his ADP going would be like late 5th, something like that. It's just it feels like one of those spots to me. It feels like isn't that about where Dameon Pierce was going at the very end of the draft this last year?
But the thing is, nobody knew about Dameon Pierce.
No one knows about Khalil Herbert except
us. They're paying attention to us.
Well, but here's the thing: like, not that many people know about Khalil Herbert. He's been a backup for the Bears that's popped up every now and then. You know what I mean? I think he'll be a really good value, and I kind of hope that happens. Is there anybody at running back that you wanted to hit on?
Well, there are a couple. Lenny Fournette was one of them.
Yeah, but dude, when I was looking at I was like, shit, we are too high on Rachaad White, But then I thought more and more about it. If there is no Leonard Fournette had kind of took the Zeke nosedive right at the end of this. Like, at the end of the season, he looked worse than I've ever seen him in this sort of the same way that Zeke has. Yeah. And then I looked over at Player Profiler just to compare where we had Rachaad White to those guys. Dude, you don't even want to know where they have him. I can't wait. Like, you can ask Matt and Cody about that in Mobile. I'm certainly going to ask them because
they hate him.
No, they have him in. I forgot what it was. Something like top 20 or something in Dynasty.
Well, here's the thing about Rachaad White is, he's going to get the opportunity, but if you look at just his efficiency and his yards after contact, not good.
Yeah, but we can't throw away everything that we had on our evaluation about him, and I don't think.
But his toughness in yards after contact, that wasn't. That was always something that was kind of in question from what I recall.
Yeah, I get it, but he's such a terrific receiver. You remember how natural that guy's hands are. He looks like a wide receiver. It's like if you want to get those extra, if you want to create those extra yards and stuff like that, maybe if you don't do it through contact, you could certainly do it as extension of the run, being such a good receiver the way he is. Do you remember the way he can frame the football in his hands, the sticky hands?
No, he's a great pass catching back, but so is like Kenyon Drake.
Well, come on now. Let's not compare him to Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake's been better.
All right. So are you low on Rachaad White?
I look after looking at those stats at the end of the season. I'm not as hot. I'm not in the top 20 with him. I don't think.
Well, no, clearly we're not in the top 20. But let me just pull it up. I'm just saying that and don't quote me on that, man. I think that's where Matt and them have him. We have Rachaad White right now somewhere around in the 40s. I mean, we have him in the same tier as Dalvin Cook and Ramondre Stevenson. And we're lower on Ramondre Stevenson than consensus. Just because we like Kevin Harris, we like Pierre Strong. We don't know if Damian Harris is going to be back. That's another interesting deal. Josh Jacobs getting out of Las Vegas, Damian Harris rekindling his love affair with Josh McDaniels.
Well, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Not that that's set in stone that's going to happen, but that's always been Byron's working theory that I've always found kind of cockamamie and interesting. All right. So anything else at running back, or do you want to move on to wide receiver?
I mean, Tony Pollard.
And again, to the people listening or watching this, we're clear. We're going to go through a complete, primer for every team, every division for this stuff. We're just talking about as we're beginning to look at it, beginning to formulate thoughts on how we're going to address these teams at the combine. Just kind of thinking about some of the first things that pop off the chart whenever, kind of pop off the page whenever we do look at that. But Pollard is clearly a giant one. And that goes into other things, right? That goes into will they franchise him? There's the whole thing with Dalton Schultz. I guess could they franchised him last year, right? Could they? I mean, so they could do it again. I don't know.
They're flirting with other tight end options there in Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I mean, I think we'll ask some of our sources about this at the Senior Bowl, but I'll bet you that they're going to say that they kind of like Jake Ferguson. They seem to like to get Peyton Hendershot. Yeah. So we'll definitely find out about that stuff. We have Dollar Bill in the comments asking about Miles Sanders. Man, that's certainly interesting too. I think the interesting thing is going to be they're going to move on from him and they're going to bring in Bijan Robinson with one of those 3 first-round picks. I mean, I don't think Bijan Robinson gets past pick 20. I don't care what people say. You don't take a running back in the first round. I think
the Cowboys might be interested in taking Bijan Robinson.
I think there are other things that the Cowboys should do. They need to recommit themselves to building their lines again. Not that their lines have been bad, but that they need to really they're going to have Tony Pollard probably. If they get rid of Pollard, then they would definitely want to get Bijan. But I mean, having Bijan, Pollard, and Zeke.
No, I mean this is contingent on Pollard leaving.
Oh, okay. Or, I mean, they could get rid of Zeke. I mean, there's been more and more kind of talk about it. I thought it was out of the question to begin with. The more and more we sort of hear stuff, and that's going to be another thing. Like at the Senior Bowl, it's such a valuable thing to snoop around and talk to our sources and things like that. We're going to get a good idea about how some of these teams are sort of thinking. All right, at wide receiver, I had 2 that I'd written down. One is just sort of a throwaway. But it just, I know it feels like going out and stepping on the damn rake and getting hit in the head with it again and again and again. And I'm not talking about Allen Robinson. I'm talking about Kadarius Toney, and not that he is a free agent, but Juju is. And if Juju leaves, and if Kadarius Toney gets a whole offseason in that program, I don't care. I'm gonna fall for the old banana in the tailpipe again with Kadarius Toney, and just go down. I will go down with this ship, like the song that lady sings. What do you think? Any thoughts on Kadarius if there is no Juju?
I mean, I've yet to see Kadarius Toney play a full complement of NFL games,
or a full game.
Really a full game, yeah.
I think we got one full game when he had that 11 target monster. But then didn't he get hurt at the end and ride off in that golf cart and grab some dude's ass or hit someone in the face? It's always something with Kadarius, man. It's the whole Kadarius experience. Yeah. So I get that, but I'm saying, dude, the talent there, he's so fast. I mean, you remember from the Senior just how fast he is.
Yeah, he's fast. I mean, so is Tutu Atwell.
Oh, come on. He's no Tutu Atwell. He's no Tank Dell. The wide receiver one that as a general sort of overview, wide receiver in free agency this year is not strong. It's just not good. It feels like the best free agent wide receiver is probably, is it DJ Chark? If it's not DJ Chark, it's maybe like Jacoby Myers. Who else? There's Alan Lazard, Paris Campbell. Like, this is Darius Slayton, Richie James Jr. That's kind of interesting. A bunch of these Giants guys will be gone. Mac Hollins is not.
A lot of middling.
Jarvis. So for me, it's not. Here's the thing about Chark too. Since it is such a bad free agent class, right? And the wide receiver, we're not through the wide receiver breakdowns yet. I'm getting the feeling that this wide receiver class probably won't be it's not going to be as strong as last year as far as the rookies, right? We're not going to have Garrett Wilson
as having
Chris Olave,
top tier talent.
There won't be 5 and 6 going in the first round. It's just not going to happen. And then your Christian Watsons and your other guys that you really like going later. It's just not going to happen, right? So, if DJ Chark is probably going to be leaving Detroit, right? And so, if it is sort of a shitty wide receiver class in free agency, someone's going to pay him. The Detroit's not going to do it. They're bringing back the same. They're bringing back the same offense. Now we have Amon-Ra St. Brown. He'll be back, but this just opens up big action and a great fantasy situation for Jameson Williams, who showed major flashes down the stretch. If he comes back all healthy, to me, it's like all bets are off, dude. It's Jameson Williams, nuclear city. Because here's Josh Reynolds is back for 2023. Khalif Raymond is back for 2023, right? It isn't like the team's going to say like, oh, we have this huge dearth of options at wide receiver. Like, they have guys they kind of like, but guys who just are kind of middling and not that good, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like they're shielding Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams for bringing in competition that could actually be viable, right? They're just shielding him from it. So I think that just for me, Jameson Williams, we're going to have to come into next year, barring unforeseen circumstances, which could always occur. But, man, we're going to need to come in just way, way higher than the field on Jameson Williams for early best ball, because as we get closer and closer to the season, people are going to start realizing this, right? And his ADP is going to rise, and we'll always adjust to that with the magical and mystical cheat sheets. But I think it's going to represent a really good value early on in super early best ball stuff that people are just going to forget about Jameson Williams. Whenever they're going
he only had like 74 snaps.
All right, good. But look, anything that'll make you forget about him, the little Men in Black thing with that little pug of yours, whatever, put it in their eyes, make them forget it all. Make them forget it all. I don't want them to remember Jameson Williams. I want to be the one that remembers Jameson Williams. Do you have anything at wide receiver?
Well, no, I was talking. It was Dynasty guys.
Okay.
Question. One of them was Jameson Williams, though.
Okay. What about? All right. So let's talk about tight end, and then we'll get into Trey Palmer, because I really am interested to hear what you have to say. Just I don't really have. There's 3 guys who I'm just interested in. Irv Smith is going to be a free agent. It feels like the Vikings are clearly going to let him go, right? And with all these tight ends, I think with these 3 tight ends that I'm going to mention, all guys that are coming up at the end of their rookie contracts, this is generally the time, tight ends, year 3, year 4, stuff like this, you can get your kind of breakouts then, right?
Yeah.
Irv has always been a super talented guy. It feels like Minnesota gave up on him. That's why they went after TJ Hawkinson. But I feel like if he got into the right situation, I still believe in Irv Smith. So I'll be interested to kind of see where he goes and how he's valued on the open market. The other guy who I've never been in on ever is Mike Gesicki. But dude, he has a statistical and physical profile as far as his athleticism that is off the charts, and he won't be back in Miami. They hate the way he does business there. They don't want a tight end that they're going to split out in the slot. They don't want him. there. They want a tight end that's going to block and who's going to go out there and eat glass like George Kittle, right?
Yeah.
That's what they want. If they want somebody in the slot, they'll just move one of their good wide receivers in there, or they'll put Trent Sherfield in there or Cedric Wilson or something. They're not gonna split out Mike Gesicki for that kind of usage. So he'll be let go, and I wonder if he could end up somewhere and be kind of like Evan Ingram was this year for Jacksonville, right? Evan Ingram also a free agent. You've got to figure they're probably going to bring him back, right? I would think that they'll bring him back. But I think Mike Gesicki could sort of take on a little bit of that Evan Ingram path, and kind of as far as that runway for a super athletic guy that could go to a situation that's far more conducive to him being successful. And Gesicki's a guy who I don't think even in best ball, it's just like massive volume best ball stuff. Never taken him. I don't think I've ever played him in DFS. I haven't been a fan, and so it's even weird for me to hear myself say that I'm interested in following what happens with Mike Gesicki, but I think
not a whole lot of depth at tight end in free agency. I mean, I like Brock Wright, maybe.
Brock Wright?
Yeah.
For the Lions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's only 24, I think.
That's an interesting take. That's an interesting take, man. I kind of want to play the song. Brock Wright, my God. It feels like every time, man, but it is. It's like these musical shares with the Lions tight ends. They get down in the red zone and they throw to him. They throw to Shane Zylstra and Brock Wright and all these other guys, man. It's pretty wild.
I mean, Dalton Schultz, is probably the highest profile tight end in free agency.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't know what the Cowboys are going to do about that. All right, let's talk about Trey Palmer. He's the rookie wide receiver out of Nebraska, 6'1", 190. So 6'1" for this class, it feels like 6'1" is kind of tall. A lot of these guys have been 5'11". You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean he plays big.
Yep. Well, I'm not sure he plays big.
Well, I mean, just watching the video, I didn't know how tall he was, but I was just watching video on him before this, and I thought he was taller, and like my comp that I made was for a taller receiver.
Okay, why don't you just give your breakdown about Trey Palmer? I'm the one who did this write up, so I'd like to hear what you have to say first, and then I'll kind of take over with the way that I saw him, because like I said, man, I feel like he's a guy who people can go all kinds of ways on.
Right. I mean, it seemed like to a large extent he was kind of a possession receiver over the middle, a lot of slants, a lot of catches out in the flat. It seemed like, and he seemed pretty fearless out there. It seemed like a lot of his action was over the middle, was between the hash marks. It seemed like, every now and then he would take the top off. It seems like he's got good vision with the ball in his hand. He didn't seem like the fastest player in the field, but it seemed like if he got a good angle on you, he could beat you.
I have news for you, Trash Man. He is the fastest player on the field.
He is?
Yes.
Oh,
he's probably the fastest player in the whole Big Ten.
Really?
Yeah.
Was he going like a 4.36 they're expecting?
I'm expecting he has to run a sub 4.4. I mean, the guy in high school, dude, he has the Louisiana State record. He's the Louisiana State record holder in the 200-meter dash for high schoolers. Wow. He broke like a 50-year-old record.
Well, maybe a lot of the video I saw was him in the short to intermediate passing game.
No, he's an unbelievable home run hitter of a dynamo. I mean, but he can get it going over the middle for sure. I worry a little bit about his hands. I think he's kind of a body catcher at times.
Okay. I guess maybe the video I saw, maybe the clips that they had put up, it was mainly.
Or it could have just been that you watched the wrong games. If you watch the Purdue, like in the Purdue game, this dude, he showed the ability.
Well, and I'm not saying he was bad. I thought he was good. It just, he seemed more like a possession receiver who would take the top off every now and then.
Okay, so here's Trey Palmer. He started out, like we said, high school track star. He holds Louisiana high school state record for the 200-meter dash. He's a 4-time state champion in both the 100-meter and the 200 meters. So he won it every year that he was in high school. He was on the sprinting track team at LSU, where he had offers to everywhere. He's a 2019 4-star coming out of high school, had offers everywhere. He's from Kennedale, Louisiana. He stays home and goes to LSU. But during the time he was at LSU, he was clearly, he's class of 2019. So he was on the same team as, for a while, was Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Then after that, he had Terrace Marshall to deal with. Then to a certain degree, he had Racey McMath to deal with and all that. He never got anything going for 3 years at LSU, right? He goes to Nebraska this last year, breaks out in his senior year in a big way. He made an obvious early connection with Casey Thompson that transferred in from Texas. And say what you will about Casey Thompson, man, but that guy will bomb it downfield. Like he's not scared to throw the football downfield and take chances. And the guy who was on the receiving end of it was clearly Trey Palmer. He had 35% of the team's receptions, 39% of the team's receiving yards, 53% of the team's receiving touchdowns. He, of all the players at the Senior Bowl this year, the best final season production profile, it certainly belongs to Trey Palmer. He's an undeniable home run hitter. Like Trashman says, it's not all he can do, though. You see him working over the middle sometimes.
I mean, I think he played most of his snaps out of the slot. I mean,
no, he didn't. He played he played like 9% of his snaps out of the slot last season. Yeah. So he was a receiver out wide. He did not play.
Because even just looking at I'm looking at the NFL draft buzz right now, and they're saying that like he was a lot of his wins were in the slot. Okay, so
I mean, I can pull up the slot rate on PFF if you want. Like, let me just look.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't. He had the most snaps out of the slot, but he was most successful in the slot.
I don't see how anybody could ever say that. I like that. See, that's why I don't read these other bullshit websites. I don't even know who that is. Let's see. So premium stats, by position. So, oh crap, yeah. So receiving grades for wide receivers. We'll do it for the regular season in FBS 2022. Trey Palmer, by the way, the 17th highest receiving grade on PFF among 425 qualifiers. So they actually really liked him. The slot rate, though, is at slot rate. Oh, I was definitely wrong, Trash Man. It wasn't it. I had Trey Palmer at. So yeah, the slot rate's actually 67.3%.
Okay,
yeah.
So my eyes aren't deceiving me.
Okay. Well, so 67.3% of the time out wide. So 226 snaps out of the slot, 100. Well, and see, that's why I go check. I know sometimes that the Trash Man's right. 108 snaps wide, 1 snap in line. So that's probably a good thing for me to add in here to it is out of the slot. Certainly,
and that's why I mean, and that's because my comparison had to do with a big slot guy.
Well, that's the thing is he's not really big. He's super fast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He looked big in the video, at least next to some of these other players.
My concern with him is he is a body catcher. He had 11 drops in 2022. It's like a 17.3% drop rate. So it's a pretty bad drop rate, right? He's also even though he has elite speed, he's only an average yards after catch creator. He goes down pretty easily whenever he's first contacted. He goes down pretty easy. I think he just has great open field vision. That's where the after catch, like if he's out in open space, that's when after catch you're not gonna catch him.
Yeah, and that's what
So for me, I'd said his route running's not smooth. His hands aren't as natural as you might expect from a guy that's such a dynamic difference maker. He also the contested catch stuff. He's not going to make a living on contested catches, even if he's big. He's just not. Yeah. A little bit more of a kind of speed and finesse guy. So Trey Palmer to me, what I compared him to a Danny Gray or a Mecole Hardman. or like a Quez Watkins type. Those are my comparisons. I think I like him better than any of those guys. Who did you compare Trey Palmer to?
I compared him to Tyler Boyd.
Oh God, but he's so much faster.
I mean, yeah.
And Boyd ran better routes and had better hands.
I mean, I was looking at his success kind of over the middle of the field in those slants, kind of the intermediate game, but a guy, who could open it up. I mean, I feel Tyler Boyd's that kind of player. Tyler Boyd's only an inch taller. To me, it doesn't seem like it seems like a pretty reasonable comparison, at least to what I was seeing on the initial videos that I saw, initial thoughts. He kind of reminded me of, and Tyler Boyd's kind of a finesse receiver, and it seemed like he kind of is too. And it was just seeming like he was winning over the middle. It seemed like that was predominantly what was going on with him and out of the slot. And to me, that it harkened to Tyler Boyd for me.
To me, it's just I can't believe he ran 67.3% of his routes out of the slot. To me, all of his biggest. I don't think he got his biggest wins out of the slot. I like him outside. I think he's good. I think
he's got capabilities too, and we've seen, if
he has a 13.5 ADOT out of the slot,
or if T Higgins or Jamar Chase isn't on the field, Tyler Boyd can play that role.
He had a 13.5 ADOT out of the slot. It's like, it's just crazy to me. Like, I mean, he's a slot guy, but he's a downfield weapon, dude. He's a home run hitter.
That's fine.
All right. So what do you think? Like, if you had to compare him to some of the guys that you have at the top, you say you like Rashee Rice, you like Jonathan Mingo. I don't know where you are on Xavier Hutchinson. Like, where does Trey Palmer fall for you in relation to those guys before we see them live next week?
I mean, I put him probably around there with Xavier Hutchinson. Maybe Hutchinson has better hands.
So is that below Rashee Rice and Jonathan Mingo initially?
Initially.